DPS has always played a big part in my game time. Standing back and pew-pewing from a distance, pew-pew! I've enjoyed countless fights from this perspective angle. The key word is enjoyed. If I had been doing this from a class I didn't enjoy, that would have made my experience much worse, and more or less made me bitter about content. In Legion, many of the specs have taken a structured gameplay of mass abilities and refined it down to just a few with different ways of using these abilities, not only through talents, but the rotation itself. All these classes are put in a countdown order of how much fun I had with them currently, and this can change easily with any given beta build. This is also based on the PvE side of the game and refers the class as a whole from utility and possible other spec uses. So let's start this thing off from the bottom with number 6. The Hunter! Unfortunately, the Hunter's shine is there as a flicker of what it once was. The loss of its utility as a ranged spec has downplayed it a ton. No more traps unless you respec to SV. The new melee Hunter spec, which feels as though its uses are limited now, that it has to run or grapple its way across the map to use them. But we are talking about ranged DPS here. MM has a bit of fun mixed in with the minor decision making of where to use your Hunter's mark, cleave or single target. But outside of that, the gameplay is simplified to keep your heavy damage abilities on cooldown, and do I hit the flashy arcane shot or multi-shot? There's not just enough to keep me interested on a long-term basis through MM. The same goes for BM. Heavily reliant on crit, the spec is very slow to start, feeling much like Fury Warriors of the last few expansions, unable to get into that damage zone due to lack of resources and procs. I found myself zoned out more than half the time while playing BM due to this issue, leaving me feeling a bit dulled as I just hit my Bestial Wrath on CD, instead of finding any actual timing area to use it, thanks to the Dire Beast mechanic. Neither range spec has any actual raid utility, and it puts me at a loss for this class. With that, let's move on to number 5. The Druid. Balance! The Druid's range spec. This spec, while doing fairly well, feels very bland. With the loss of the rotation change and thought that went into its Eclipse bar, this spec feels hollow. The new Astral Power resource simplifies the spec to mind-numbing at some points. Build up your Astral Power, Star Surge, hit the shiny buttons, repeat. Now I generalize that a bit, but the basis is still the same. If more abilities worked off the Astral Power than generating it, this could change drastically, as you would have some better choices, other than, do I Star Surge or do I Starfall? Some players will enjoy this better as it leaves gaps for error in the rotation, as where live an error can be brutal. This also allows you a bit more movement without penalty, so it does have some benefit. For a once awesome spec, the best thing I found with my Balance Druid was when I got bored with it, I was able to respec to Guardian or Resto to have a wider variety of gameplay. The Druid being the only 4 spec class in game leaves it able to perform from all angles. Tank, heal, melee, ranged. It allows some amazing flexibility for any situation needed, making it hard to get bored of as a class overall. But its ranged DPS gameplay feels as though it is extremely lacking. With this, we'll go on to number 4. The Mage! Arcane, Fire, and Frost. Oh my! Ultimately, a range spec for any play style. These glass cannons still have what it takes to do some great damage in a PvE world. Arcane, in my eyes, would be the weaker of the 3 in actual fun gameplay. The mastery change has left the spec feeling bland. At first I loved the change. Then I played the spec more and more and found that without the mana restraint on the mastery, it left it very hollow feeling. The only thing you managed really was arcane charges and long CDs. Fire and Frost jump way up on the fun though. With Frost being fixed to having Flurry instead of Frost Orb on Brain Freeze procs, bringing it back in line to a solid spec and not a gimmick spec of constantly wondering if Frost Orb is going to work correctly or not, Frost feels very similar to Live, which was a very fun playstyle. Now Fire has had some of the best spec reworking this expansion since Cataclysm. allowing this spec to line up extremely well for some solid, well thought out damage through procs and general rotation gameplay. The CD and artifact management allow this spec to have some awesome control, which bumps up the gameplay tremendously. Where this class really lacks is its utility. Sure, it still has polymorph, time warp, and conjure refreshments, but outside of that, the spec brings nothing but damage to the table, leaving other classes with a bit more of an edge over mages. With that, let's move on to number 3. The Priest! Shadow is the name, insanity is the game. Taking control of the void and rocking some damage. This class has a huge benefit over most. As Shadow, you have a huge CC benefit, stuns, fears, mind controls. You have great self-healing and raid healing CDs, solid damage reduction, and a great damage output. Talent choices are extremely solid also, giving you many great options per tier. Nothing's better than making a pact with an old god to do some extremely sick damage, only to die horribly at the end, when you fully succumb to the madness. Shadow feels great all around as a spec. You still have the multi-dot feel of the spec, yet you have some great single target DPS thanks to the new Void form. Activate Void form and do whatever it takes to stay in that Void form for as long as possible just to build up and do it all over again. It plays very well, and with almost 2 different rotations to run in this spec, it's just damned fun to play. The other great benefit of Shadow is it not only has 1, but 2 completely different healing specs to master and help on progression fights where it may be needed. Holy has had some amazing changes, making it viable in almost all situations if you need more of a direct healer. Holy will allow you for some solid heal throughput, allowing you to step up when needed. Dis, on the other hand, will be amazing for the fights where another healer is needed to help smooth the damage out on the raid, letting your main healers do the core of the healing as you continue to put out some damage, helping on both sides of the spectrum. Overall, the Priest is a solid choice as a ranged DPS, giving some good gameplay control, utility, and great healing off specs for raid progression scenarios. Now on to number 2. The Warlock! Yeah. More specifically, Affliction and Demonology though. Both of these specs are feeling top-notch in gameplay, as where Destruction is feeling a bit left behind. Affliction, hands down, has the best multi-dot gameplay it has had in years, still having a bit of a ramp-up, but dominating once it gets there. Unstable Affliction's changes have also made it so you can create better burst windows to help in areas it lacked before, with target swapping and timing with trinket procs. Affliction also has some insane self-sustain, keeping the healer's focus on other areas where they are needed, helping out on healer mana. Demonology has had a great rework also. Even with the loss of Metamorphosis, this spec's focus for summoning multiple demons to do your bidding adds some great timed gameplay. Making sure to summon your demons and always keep them empowered. You are the master, but you are nothing without proper control and buff maintenance. As for Destruction, I feel it took the short road for the class, leaving it similar yet gutted in both gameplay and overall performance. The mastery of Destruction leaves it on a damage roller coaster of how well you do overall. Some fights you do absolutely insane. Others, you're waving from the bottom by a large margin. Overall, Warlocks have a solid place as a range damage dealer, having a battle res, Hellstone, self-healing and shielding, and the opportunity of getting the group together faster with summoning on the fly. With this, we move on to number 1. The Shaman! You knew it to be true! Elemental! God, I love the changes made to the spec. Reverting back to the pre-WAD mastery and passives have brought this spec back to life. Along with talents like Ice Fury, you can restructure your entire rotation, making this spec extremely fun. I feel, after last expansion, Blizzard is trying to make up to Shamans, giving them at least a very solid start in the Legion. Elemental had it rough all through Warlords of Draenor, never really matching up to what other specs could do no matter how hard they tried. Now they seem to be the most favored spec in Legion, having both solid DPS numbers in single target and AoE baseline, and only improving each area through talents. This gives them a solid edge over some of the other range class choices. They also have the choice to talent for some awesome raid cooldowns. Ancestral Guidance to provide some great burst healing, Windrush Totem allowing the raid to move into position quickly, and a wide variety of CC totems to help in most trash situations. The other specs as a shaman reflect well on the overall class also. Enhancement, being the melee damage spec, still does great damage with almost all the same utility and great mobility. Enhancement also fulfills its spec fantasy by not only having an enjoyable time enhancing yourself for better damage, but the opportunity to enhance others. Restoration, being the healing aspect of the class, also fits as a good swing roll when needed. In possible progression fights needing an additional healer, Restoration Shaman still have the highest amount of raid CDs out of all the healing specs, giving it a great edge on other healers, especially in a stacked AoE situation. The Shaman takes top dog for me as not only range DPS, but an overall class in general. Overall, as usual, this is based on my opinion only, and you should always test things for yourself before jumping into a class as a main and not enjoying it. Focus on the classes you enjoy and where you can advance yourself in a progression group, whether it would be a more sustainable DPS role, or a class you can easily swap to heals and help push a boss needing that extra healer. I have full reviews out on each spec mentioned above if you would like to look more into them. But until next time, thanks for watching.